Thanks, Mandy. Welcome to the fourth of our 2014 webinar series on the Support Anti-Terrorism by Fostering Effective Technologies Act of 2002, or the Safety Act. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and throughout the year. Our webinars have discussed a range of Safety Act topics: Safety Act 101, the application process, the renewal process, developmental testing and evaluation designations, and specialized types of applications such as for sports facilities. However, we have not discussed block designations, block certifications, and pre-qualification designation notices. In the next 30 minutes or so, we will talk a little bit more about what block designations, block certifications, and pre-qualification designation notices are and are not, and the current block designations, block certifications, and pre-qualification designation notices available. If you are having trouble with the audio on your computer, you can always use the dial-in provided on the left-hand side of the screen. The slides from this webinar are available for download in the pod labeled File Share. It's the file called Safety Act Webinar 092514.pdf. The webinar will also be available for download at www.safetyact.gov in the future. If you are new to the Safety Act process, our previous webinars, slides and audio, can be viewed on www.safetyact.gov. Finally, if you have specific suggestions for future webinars, please let us know by sending an email to safetyacthelpdesk@dhs.gov or let us know in the chat room at the end of this webinar. OSAI staff members will be available to address specific questions in the chat room during the webinar. We will also have some time for questions at the end. If you have more questions and need additional help to answer your specific application-related questions, you can always contact OSAI via the Safety Act Help Desk at a later time. I'd like to introduce one of the newest members of the Office of Safety Act Implementation, our new Deputy Director, Andrea Schultz. Andrea, would you like to make some introductory remarks?
Sure, I would. It's a really exciting time. I'm very happy to have joined the Office of Safety Act Implementation. Been working with this office from a different position for a long time now, so I'm happy to be a member of this team. I'm really glad that you have carved some time out to come and do this webinar today because we're going to talk about the block designations, and this is very exciting because we have two new block designations, as probably a lot of the participants know today. And Science and Technologies had a great time working with the EPA, Air and Customs and Border Protection to develop these latest block designations. And now it's time to figure out, now that they're approved, now what? So how do the applications get filled out? What exactly does it mean? And what are the protection levels that are offered? So we're very lucky to have you here, Doctor. And I'm going to turn it over to you to explain to everyone how they apply.
Great, thanks, Andrea.
Yep.
Excellent. So everyone, I'd like to start with a brief review. So as part of the Homeland Security Act of 2002, Congress enacted several levels of liability protection for the providers of anti-terrorism technologies. That's the central purpose of the Safety Act. The Safety Act provides incentives for the development and deployment of anti-terrorism technologies by creating systems of risk management and litigation management. The reason for the Act is to ensure that the threat of liability does not deter potential manufacturers or sellers of anti-terrorism technologies from developing, commercializing, and deploying technologies that could significantly reduce the risks or mitigate the effects of large-scale terrorist events. Thus, the Act creates certain liability limitations for claims arising out of, relating to, or resulting from an act of terrorism, where a qualified anti-terrorism technology has been deployed. The Act does not limit liability for harms caused by anti-terrorism technologies when no act of terrorism has occurred. The Homeland Security Secretary has to declare the attack as an act of terrorism for purposes of Section 865(2) of the Safety Act. For the purpose of the Safety Act, an act of terrorism is any act that the DHS Secretary determines meets the requirements under subparagraph B of Section 442 of the Safety Act, as such requirements are further defined and specified by the Secretary of DHS. The Act meets the requirements of subparagraph B if the act is unlawful, causes harm to a person, property, or entity in the United States, or in the case of a domestic United States air carrier or United States flag vessel, or a vessel based principally in the United States on which U.S. income tax is paid and whose insurance coverage is subject to regulation in the United States, in or outside the United States, uses or attempts to use instrumentalities, weapons, or other methods designed or intended to cause mass destruction, injury, or other loss to citizens or institutions of the United States. So that means that the Safety Act would not apply in the event of a natural disaster. It's not all hazards coverage. Further, the Safety Act is not a regulatory program. Your participation is completely voluntary. But because we are non-regulatory, we also don't publish specific requirements. We can only offer our best technical opinion. The Safety Act provides two primary levels of protection: designation and certification. Designation provides a liability cap, as well as exclusive action in federal court, no joint or several liability for non-economic damages, and no punitive damages or prejudgment interest. An applicant is required by the Safety Act to obtain liability insurance in the amount of the specified liability cap contained in the letter that you receive. A full designation and associated certification, which we'll talk about later, normally lasts for 5 years, after which time both can be renewed. Any technology deployed during its period of designation is protected for the lifetime of that deployment. If a technology shows promise, but is not sufficiently mature to receive a full designation, a developmental testing and evaluation, or DT&E designation, is available to provide protection during further testing or trial deployments to collect the additional efficacy data necessary for a full designation. A DT&E designation provides similar liability protections as provided by a full designation, but with certain limitations and constraints. In general, DT&E designations will include limitations on the use and deployment of the subject technology, remain terminable at will by DHS should any concerns regarding the safety of their technology come to light, and will have a limited term not to exceed a reasonable period for testing or evaluating the technology, presumptively not longer than about 3 years. Further, the Safety Act liability protections associated with DT&E designations will apply only to acts that occur during the period set forth in the particular DT&E designation. In certain circumstances, the department may find that a technology being evaluated for designation may not be mature enough for that level of coverage. In the event that an applicant is awarded a DT&E designation, however, additional requirements then could be associated with that DT&E designation, such as submitting a test plan and proposing a test location to the Office of Safety Act Implementation. Thus, an applicant may be asked to resubmit a formal DT&E application. For information on DT&Es, see our DT&E webinar from 2013. For technologies that have a high level of technical maturity and a history of deployment and use, certification might be appropriate. In addition to the benefits provided under designation, certification allows a seller of an anti-terrorism technology to assert the government contractor defense that immunizes sellers from liability for claims arising from acts of terrorism. Technologies that receive certification will also be placed on an approved product list for Homeland Security that you can find on www.safetyact.gov. And that brings me to my last review point. The typical complete Safety Act application takes around 120 calendar days to evaluate. While 120 days is our goal, on average, some applications might take a little longer. Sometimes complex technologies take longer, and sometimes our processes might even move a little bit faster. If you feel that 120 days might be too long because you have an imminent procurement, you may request an expedited review by filling out item D.2 of the designation application form and providing supporting information. The decision to grant an expedited review will be made by the Director of the Office of Safety Act Implementation. While we do strive to meet these expedited goals, sometimes they are very ambitious. We also rely on you to submit a complete, accurate information at initial filing and respond equally expeditiously to requests for additional information. Apart from the normal expedited review process, there are other ways to obtain expedited processing. You can file an application under a block designation or certification or a procurement qualification designation notice, and that is the subject of today's webinar. There are 3 main types of streamlined processes for seeking Safety Act protections. As noted in the previous slide, whenever you file an application, you can request expedited review. However, sometimes expedited review is predetermined. This is through block designations, block certifications, and pre-qualification designation notices. That's the subject of the webinar. Block designations and block certifications may be issued at the Secretary of Homeland Security's discretion and are intended to recognize the technologies that meet the criteria for designation as a qualified anti-terrorism technology or for certification based on established performance standards or defined technical characteristics. One example, which we'll talk about later, is our Certified Cargo Screening Program block. Companies meeting Transportation Security Administration specifications for the operation of certified cargo screening facilities can seek streamlined coverage. Fundamentally, block designation or block certifications will announce to potential sellers of the subject QATT that DHS has predetermined that a QATT satisfies the technical criteria for either designation or certification, and only limited additional economic and technical analyses will normally be conducted. The terms of any such block designation or block certification will establish the procedures and conditions upon which an applicant may receive Safety Act coverage as the seller of the subject technology. Applications from potential sellers of that QATT that is the subject of either a block designation or block certification will receive expedited review and are required to submit a submission with a more limited amount of information concerning the merits of the technical merits of that technology. A pre-qualification designation notice is very similar, only it is related to a specific local, state, or federal acquisition and is typically contract specific. However, applications filed against either a block or PQDN participate in a streamlined process to determine whether you meet the predefined specifications and what amount of liability insurance you should carry. So on our next slide, we're going to address what that process looks like from a top level. Well, it's really straightforward. So first, you should locate the lists of blocks and PQDNs on the Safety Act website to determine whether you are manufacturing or otherwise providing a technology that is eligible for a block or PQDN. As you will see on the next slide, these lists are easy to access and contain specific instructions for filing an application against a block or PQDN. Second, you should carefully read the instructions for the block and PQDN that are posted on safetyact.gov. You will be asked to supply information on your company, technical materials specific to that block or PQDN, and insurance and financial information. Third, OSAI will verify your eligibility for the block and PQDN and evaluate your insurance and financial information. It's important that you supply answers to all of the items described in the block or PQDN instructions. While OSAI strives for a 60 to 90 calendar day processing time for applications filed against blocks and PQDNs, a streamlined evaluation is only possible if we work together. So please provide all the information requested in the specific block and PQDN instructions as soon as possible. We will go through that information during the rest of this webinar. Currently, approved block designations and certifications are posted on the website with details on the streamlined instructions, and applicants can file such applications only under the existing active blocks. So to do that, you need to see our active block designation and block certification lists. If you are an applicant or a federal partner who has an idea for a block designation or certification, please contact OSAI through the help desk. You also might have noticed our active procurement list. That's where you can find a list of PQDNs. Technologies being acquired by specific agencies or participating in government-sponsored programs might also be eligible for streamlined processing, so be sure to check that link too. If you are a government contracting officer or a program manager and you think you might be acquiring a technology that should be on our active procurement list, please contact OSAI. If you click on the active procurement, block designation, or block certification list, you will find that list of active blocks or PQDNs. Each listing will have a notice and instructions. Blocks will also have a number that looks like BD- whatever that number is. This tracking code should be used if you contact OSAI with questions on that block. The notice will tell you what is covered under the block or procurement, and it, along with the instructions, will explain what you need to submit at the time you file. Also, you should make sure when filing your application, you select the block or procurement links on the website. So we're just going to walk a little bit through that process. So once you have identified that you're eligible for a block and that you can participate in this streamlined processing, you should log in and create an application off of that block or PQDN. The displayed screen right now shows the three major screens. First, make sure that you select you are filing a block or procurement application. Second, select the correct block or procurement. Third, answer the administrative questions, any questions in the instructions, and submit all necessary technical, insurance, and financial information requested. It's that simple. As always, if you have any additional questions, please contact the Safety Act Help Desk. And I think we need to keep going. We are going to be talking about insurance and financials next, if we can flip to the next slide. On the slide there you see where we see the list of blocks and then the lists of where you file. But one of the main issues we have with the block designation is not providing the requested insurance and financial information. That's sort of the biggest logjam in our streamlined processes. And no matter which block or PQDN you are applying against, you need to supply insurance and financial information. And that's because the Safety Act is a risk and liability management tool. We need to understand which of your current insurance policies would satisfy compensable third-party claims arising from, relating to, or resulting from an act of terrorism. So for example, is it your general liability, your professional liability, a product liability, aviation policy, a standalone terrorism policy? Once you've figured out which policy applies, answer all the applications relating to insurance. Please note that if you have more than one policy that might apply, provide separate answers for each policy. Also, if your policy will expire during that evaluation window, please provide updated information about the renewed policy. For insurance, an insurance certificate is not enough usually to submit because it doesn't typically contain information about premiums, even if it does list the limits. So it also doesn't provide us information on terrorism endorsements and things of that nature. So you should answer all those questions in the application for each policy separately, just instead of providing that insurance certificate. If you don't currently have terrorism insurance, we'll also ask you to supply insurance quotes. If you have an insurance policy that just happens to exclude terrorism, the easiest way to get a quote is to add for a quote that would add terrorism coverage under the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act to an existing policy. And if you have no insurance at all, you can't get a TRIA quote or just think the quote is too expensive, you can always get quotes for entirely new policies that would respond to a potential Safety Act claim. We recommend that you start by getting quotes for multiple limits, be them $1, $5, or $10 million or coverage. 2, 5, and 10 sometimes is a good place to start. For any quote though, remember to ask your broker or insurance company to assume that the technology will receive Safety Act protections. We also ask that all applicants supply your most recent financial statements. This could be your income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flows. If the primary named insured on your insurance program is an entity other than your company, such as a parent, provide the parent company's most recent financial statements. Again, income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flows as well. For financials, we need the balance sheet and income statement from the most recent fiscal year and at the same corporate level as the primary insured. Finally, we always ask you to provide information on reasonable, heavy emphasis on the reasonable, revenue projections. These projections are solely related to sales of the technology and shouldn't include any revenues you expect from other products or services that you might provide. If your technology, which is the case in some of these blocks, isn't revenue producing, that's okay. Just let us know then what the technology's cost projections might be instead. Whether you're providing a revenue or cost data, you should provide a projection figure for your current fiscal year, as well as each of the following 2 fiscal years for a total of 3 years of projections. So now we're going to transition and we're going to talk a little bit about the list of active blocks and PQDNs. We right now have 8 active blocks and 2 PQDNs. We're going to walk through each of those blocks and PQDNs that you can see on the screen and discuss the information requested should any of you wish to file against one of those existing blocks or PQDNs. OSAI is always exploring new options for blocks and PQDNs, so we suggest you check safetyact.gov periodically as this list might change. On screen, you will see the first and currently very successful and popular block designation for TSA certified cargo screening facilities. Per the certified cargo screening program, in 2007, Congress passed the implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act or more commonly known as the 9/11 Act. And this law then required that all cargo transported on a passenger aircraft be screened for explosives as of August 1st, 2010. And so TSA developed the Certified Cargo Screening Program, CCSP, as a solution to help industry reach that 100% screening mandate. This program enables freight forwarders and shippers to pre-screen cargo prior to arrival at an airport. Most CCSP shipper participants have been able to quickly incorporate physical screening into their shipping processes at a very small cost to their operation. As part of the CCSP, TSA will review a company's certified cargo screening facility program, including hiring, vetting, and training of employees, cargo screening procedures, and chain of custody procedures. If some of those items sound very similar to what the Safety Act might look for, you're very right. Because TSA is reviewing items that OSAI might typically consider in a review, all you need to do for this block is submit copies of your current CCSF certificates and your current insurance and financial information. If you plan on bringing additional facilities online in the future, don't worry. Any designation received under a block or PQDN can be modified just like a conventional application. So if you add more facilities later, you can file a notice of modification, submit the additional certificates, and update insurance information. Also, for those already designated under this block, at the time of renewal, make sure to provide us with current certificates for all your facilities and updated insurance and financial information. Also, for this and all the blocks and PQDNs, you'll note an expiration date. Blocks and PQDNs can be renewed, but sometimes the actual block itself does expire. So if you have a technology that meets a block or PQDN, please apply as soon as possible. Our next block that you'll see up there on screen is another block available with the TSA program, and that's for the TSA Screening Partnership Program. Per TSA, the Aviation Transportation Security Act, ATSA of 2001, required TSA to conduct a pilot program with up to 5 airports, where screening would be performed by private contractors under federal oversight. At the conclusion of the pilot in 2004, TSA created the Screening Partnership Program. If you're providing SPP services at an airport, you are eligible for streamlined processing under the SPP block. In addition to your insurance and financial information, please provide a description of your company and a list of the airports at which you provide services if you have started to provide those services. OSAI will coordinate with the SPP office to confirm your eligibility. It's that simple. Just make sure that you have been approved by TSA to provide SPP services prior to submitting your application, even if you haven't started performing work. I'll be introducing our next PQDN. As you can see, TSA has been a great partner for us, and this is our last TSA-related technology that is the subject of an active procurement, or PQDN. And it's for integrated logistics support services for passenger screening and airport security checkpoint equipment. If you're supplying services to TSA under the contract number that's listed on the screen there, you can submit for streamlined review under this PQDN. As I noted before, a lot of these PQDNs are contract specific, and this is an example you can see on the screen with the contract number provided. Moving to a different partner that we have, the next block I'd like to mention is the DNDO, or Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, Grader Program. The Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, DNDO, is mandated by Congress to set technical capability standards and implement a test and evaluation program for preventative radiological or nuclear rad-nuke detection equipment in the United States. The Graduated Rad-Nuke Detector Evaluation Reporting Program, or GRADER, evaluates commercial off-the-shelf COTS rad-nuke detection equipment against national consensus standards adopted by the Department of Homeland Security and technical capability standards. On its website, which I believe is on the slide, DNDO outlines the requirements to be listed on the GRADER evaluated equipment list, the GEL. These requirements include testing at an independent laboratory and other requirements as specified by the various GRADER compliance levels. While you'll note on DNDO's website that there are 4 GRADER compliance levels, 0 through 3, only technologies meeting levels 2 and 3 can currently apply under the block designation. However, the greater block does apply to a range of equipment, including alarming personal radiation detectors, survey meters, radionuclide identifiers, radiation detection portal monitors, mobile and transportable systems, and spectroscopic personal radiation detectors. I challenge all of you to say that last one 3 times fast. The greater block is a great vehicle for manufacturers of rad nuke detection equipment to be linked with independent test laboratories to verify performance and to work with both the DNDO and OSAI to bring these products into the market space. We encourage you to check out the DNDO Grader program at www.dhs.gov/guidance-grader program. DNDO, in addition to the Grader block, has an active procurement for handheld radioisotope identification devices, or RIIDSs, RIDS, selected vendors under the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office's handheld radioisotope identification with that great solicitation number listed on the screen are eligible for a streamlined review. So if you're supplying these systems to DNDO under that listed contract, you might be eligible for streamlined review. Again, for all these, remember to give us your insurance and financial information. This block designation that's up on the screen extends to mobile water treatment systems that could be used to provide a safe drinking water supply in the aftermath of terrorist attacks. It's easy to envision an event which causes standard water supplies to become inaccessible or compromised following an act of terrorism. So, for example, if there was a targeted attack on a water utility or a massive explosion that would disable an urban area, some sort of additional compromise to the water treatment facilities could result in contaminated water. And so we worked with an internal partner here to develop this block designation for the secure certified mobile water treatment systems. So these types of equipment are designed to on-site generate clean water. So that in the event that a water supply becomes unusable, we have a system that could allow for a readily available source of clean water to aid in the treatment of injured individuals. It could help prevent the outbreak of disease due to degradation in hygiene and sanitation. And, you know, the event that could trigger this is very widespread. So regardless, post-event recovery in all circumstances will have a common necessity, which is clean water. So this block is a little bit different. Rather than referring to a specific federal program or set of guidelines, the block provides a list of technical specifications that a mobile potable water treatment system should meet. Some of these technical specifications include, and I think these are important, they're listed on the screen and in the block. The systems must be transportable, weighing less than 8,000 pounds, and capable of being installed and operational within 48 hours after deployment. Systems are capable of pumping and treating raw surface water sources, inclusive of fresh, brackish, and saltwater sources, and at a minimum rate of 0.01 millions of US gallons per day, with an excess storage capacity of 15,000 US gallons. Resultant water from these systems should comply with minimum standards set forth by the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Primary Drinking Water Regulations for drinking water quality in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974, as amended, and the related National Primary Drinking Water Regulations. Systems should have an independent power supply. It can operate for a minimum of 2 days without refueling. The technology operates in environments where rain falls at a rate of 1 inch per hour for 4 hours, at temperatures greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit and at temperatures less than 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the midst of dusty environments. Systems should also have definitive plans that are consistent with federal, state, and local regulations for the handling, processing, storing, and/or disposing of hazardous residue that the technology might produce as a result of operation. Systems also should include operator training, maintenance manuals, setup instructions, and additional consumables, and water testing kits. So if you have a solution that meets those specifications, please take a look at the instructions for this block on our website. Again, there are very detailed specifications on this one, so we encourage you to check them out. Our next block designation is for multi-band LAN mobile radio providers They're entering the public safety radio market, offering portable, handheld, and mobile radios capable of operating across disparate radio bands and are in use by public safety today. And these radios have the potential to be utilized in response to a terrorist incident and would provide for more seamless communication across disparate responder communities, such as federal law enforcement, police, emergency medical personnel, fire, potentially military or other agencies. Like the Certified Mobile Potable Water Treatment Systems block, the multiband radio block is designed to encourage manufacturers to build multiband radios that meet a specific list of technical specifications. Those specifications would include a radio that operates on all radio frequency bands between 138 to 174 megahertz, 380 to 512 megahertz, and 762 to 870 megahertz. Has the same form factor, dimensional, as similar single-band radios, includes analog and digital Project 25 P25 waveforms, operates on P25 conventional, trunked, or mixed conventional trunked, Phase 1 and Phase 2 system configurations, meets the environmental simulation tests such as mil-specs 810 subparts C, D, E, and F, must be certified as intrinsically safe, passing industry standards 1, 2, 3, Division 1 Group C, D, E, F, G. Again, all these are available for you to look at on the website. It's also given a T4 rating for temperatures. See the ANSI Telecommunications Industry Association standard. It has an auto ignition temperature class T4, meets advanced encryption standard AES, Federal Information Processing Standard FIPS 140-2, meets the output feedback data encryption standard OFBDS encryption, includes an internal or external global positioning system, GPS, emergency alert capability that can provide a user's location, has a battery life that meets or exceeds the standard 8-hour work shift, an 80-10-10 or 95-5 ratio, and is capable then of mixing analog and or digital P25 conventional and or trunked channels within a single zone. Just like the mobile potable water treatment system, if you're the manufacturer of a multiband radio, please check out this block. So the next 3 blocks that we will discuss are our most recent blocks, published in the last quarter of FY14. All of them are very exciting, and we're encouraging people to submit applications under those blocks and all our blocks as applicable. So our next block is with the Department of Energy. So per the National Nuclear Security Administration, the mission of the Global Threat Reduction Initiative, GTRI, is to reduce and protect vulnerable nuclear and radiological material located at civilian sites. GTRI supports the U.S. Department of Energy's nuclear security goals by preventing terrorists from acquiring nuclear and radiological materials that could be used in weapons of mass destruction or other acts of terrorism. GTRI works towards achieving its mission by converting research reactors and isotope production facilities from the use of highly enriched uranium to low enriched uranium, removing and or disposing of excess nuclear and radiological materials, and protecting high priority nuclear and radiological materials from theft. Together, these efforts provide a comprehensive approach to preventing terrorist access to nuclear and radiological materials. As part of this initiative, GTRI has worked to better secure some radiological materials. The In-Device Delay Kit program provides manufacturers and retrofitters with guidance on how to secure radioactive sources used in a variety of equipment. Through this block designation, manufacturers who install IDD kits at the factory or install these kits in the field can seek Safety Act designation through a streamlined process. We encourage anyone engaged in this important mission to check out the IDD block. Our next block is for risk assessments performed using the Environmental Protection Agency EPA Vulnerability Self-Assessment Tool, VSAT 6.0. As we look at some information from DHS, we know that there are approximately 160,000 public drinking water systems and more than 16,000 publicly owned wastewater treatment systems in the United States. Approximately 84% of the U.S. population receives their potable water from these drinking water systems. and more than 75% of the U.S. population has its sanitary sewage treated by those wastewater systems. The water and wastewater system sector is vulnerable to a variety of attacks, which would include, as we've discussed, contamination of water supplies, physical attacks, cyber attacks, and if those attacks were realized, the result could be a large number of illnesses or casualties and/or denial of service that would impact public health and our economy. Critical services such as firefighting and healthcare, and other dependent and interdependent sectors such as energy, food, and agriculture, and transportation systems would suffer negative impacts from denial of service in the water and wastewater system sector. So one of our newest blocks is partnered with the EPA to help address the waste and wastewater system sector. This block focuses on users of EPA's free vulnerability self-assessment tool, or VSAT, and it provides those users with some Safety Act protections. VSAT is a risk assessment software tool for water, wastewater, and combined utilities of all sizes. The tool assists those who perform security threats and natural hazards risk assessments, as well as updating utility emergency response plans. EPA, in collaboration with water sector partners, developed VSAT to be consistent with the ANSI AWWA J100-10 Risk Analysis and Management for Critical Asset Protection RAMCAP standard for risk and resilience management of water and wastewater systems. VSAT contains 8 steps: the setup and creation of a new analysis, the assignment of asset and threat pairs, identifying terrorism countermeasures, assessing terrorist threats and natural hazards, conducting baseline analysis, conducting improvement analysis, use cost and risk to build countermeasure packages, and results and reports. This is a bit of a different type of block for us because it's designed around the use of a free downloadable tool from a federal partner. So if you're one of the 53,000 public water systems or 16,000 publicly owned waterworks nationwide, you might be eligible for coverage if you're conducting a risk assessment using this tool. The block applies when risk assessments are performed under the direction and supervision of a public water system and/or public-owned treatment works owner, manager, or certified operator responsible for water, wastewater, or combined utility, conducted by qualified persons and performed at a minimum of every 5 years. This block is also intended to establish a relationship between OSAI and your public utility or water system once a utility or water system obtains Safety Act protection for using that VSAT tool. You might want to seek follow-on coverage for your local security program then, incorporating the results of VSAT 6.0. We hope that many public water systems and publicly owned treatment works will take advantage of this block. We're moving on to another of our partners, and this is for CBP's Tier 3 Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism Service. And so last but not least, I'd like to talk about this, our most recent block. Again, it's for Tier 3 CTPAT services. This would apply to importers, any of you out there who might have been certified as Tier 3 compliant by the CTPAT program, or those of you who might wish to become CTPAT Tier 3 compliant in the future. Entities participating at a Tier 3 level have implemented robust security practices which exceed the minimum security criteria and conform to security best practices as identified by CBP. These security practices are also geared specifically toward preventing the transfer of terrorists themselves, contraband, and weapons of mass effect, not simply loss prevention. Further, CTPAT security procedures require that not only the importer, but all of its business partners eligible for CTPAT are CTPAT certified. If a business partner of an importer is not eligible for CTPAT because of its international registration, or if it is otherwise not eligible for Tier 3 status, the importer must still require that the business partner demonstrate it meets CTPAT program security criteria. CTPAT Tier 3 requirements are that all members of the supply chain adhere to CTPAT best practices, irrespective of whether they are eligible for the CTPAT Tier 3 status. Specific security measures include an annual security profile review, an annual risk assessment process that includes mapping cargo flows, conducting threat assessments, and creating action plans to address vulnerabilities, a verifiable written selection process of business partners, personnel security practice such as background checks and termination procedures as part of processes for the hiring, vetting, and screening of personnel, procedural security measures including documentation of manifesting procedures, detecting cargo discrepancies, and the like. Physical security measures such as fencing, gates, gatehouses, parking, building structures, lock and key controls, security lighting, alarms, and video surveillance cameras. Access control measures for employees, visitors, deliveries, things like that. Container security throughout the container inspection, storage, and sealing process. Security training of employees in all areas of security. Information technology security measures such as administrative controls, password protection, employee accountability, and network security. And finally, outreach to ensure that importers' business partners are in compliance with those CTPAT minimum security standards as applicable to Tier 3. Safety Act protections would also extend to the training of personnel, including training materials encompassing the CTPAT program, international supply chain concerns, transportation and logistics information, and other relevant supply chain security issues for Tier 3. So, if you are CTPAT Tier 3, check out the block instructions today, and we look forward to seeing your application as we do for applications under all of those blocks. So as you can see, there are a number of blocks and PQDNs available to allow you to apply for a streamlined review under the Safety Act. OSAI is always looking for additional opportunities to increase the number of blocks and PQDNs, so check out our latest news and block and procurement list periodically. If you have a suggestion for a block or PQDN, please submit your suggestion to the Safety Act Help Desk. OSAI will do its best to reach out to other agencies to explore the feasibility of a block or PQDN. If you're filing under one of our existing blocks or PQDNs, please make sure that you supply all of the necessary insurance and financial information, along with any specific technical requirements. Finally, just one last note. PQDNs begin with Procurement Pre-Qualification Request, PPQRs. A PPQR is filed by a government agency rather than a company. So if you are a federal, state, or local official who will be acquiring a specific anti-terrorism technology, particularly from multiple vendors, please contact OSAI. OSAI will work with you to determine whether the technology which is the subject of your acquisition would be eligible for a PQDN and on the submission of a PPQR. PPQRs can only be submitted by federal, state, and local acquisition entities. OSAI will typically ask for information on how you have tested or will test your technical performance and the anti-terrorism capabilities of those technologies. However, because each case is unique, please contact OSAI. We want to thank you all for joining us today. And on the screen, you'll see information on how to contact the Office of Safety Act Implementation. And we want you to remember that we are here to help you as you start or continue your Safety Act journey. Before we take questions, I'd like to turn it back to Andrea for some closing remarks.
I love how I can just slide in and out like that. So I just want to say thank you, Laura, because I think you did an excellent job reviewing all of these different block designations. With 8 designations, there's a great diversity here, and I hope that everybody that's listening today also takes a look around their peer group and shares this webinar with them in the future so that everybody's aware this webinar was recorded, and it will be posted on www.safetyact.gov. And we also make it really easy because you can download them, and they're small enough files that if you have an inbox that will withstand something, you can even email this to folks. So there's a lot of really good information that you covered here today, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that they can access this in the future, not only from the website, but also by sending an email to someone. And as you mentioned earlier, this slide deck is also downloadable right now, so you don't have to even wait a couple of days. Also, questions. We're going to open it up now for Dr. Idle to answer questions, and I really would encourage everybody to ask questions. If you're dialed in on the phone, the operator is going to provide an opportunity for you to ask those questions. But even if you didn't dial in and you're just joining us on the web, you can type those questions in the lower left-hand side, and we're going to be able to see them and manage questions that way. So I think it's a good time to open it to questions. Mandy, are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am. At this time, if you do like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and record your name. If your question has been answered or you'd like to withdraw your question, please press *2. Once again, if you do like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and record your name. One moment, please.
While we're waiting for the operator-assisted question, I can see a question came in here asking about I think the CTPAT, is this for importers or carriers? And what are the benefits, and are there any costs?
Okay. Well, let's start with the last one first, because
Okay,
that's always
that's
the
the
easiest
easiest.
one. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Safety Act program, there is no cost for filing an application with the Office of Safety Act Implementation. This is a free voluntary program that DHS offers to all of you. The only costs associated with filing an application are those that you might incur internally in terms of filing out the forms. We also do ask that you maintain insurance that would cover third-party claims arising out of an act of terrorism. And obviously, as I see my car insurance bill in October, I can tell you that insurance does have a fixed cost associated with that. But in terms of the application fee itself, there is no application fee. Tier 3 right now for CTPAT is importers. As if CBP expands those Tier 3, we can certainly look at expanding the block. And I think the last question was requirements. What was the third? I've lost it on the screen. What are the benefits? The benefits are the benefits associated with all Safety Act applications, and that's that liability cap in the event of an act of terrorism. We know from the limited case history we have that two things could happen after the event of an act of terrorism, unfortunately, and that's that terrorists usually don't present themselves in U.S. court to be sued. So often there are private companies that are facing these third-party claims arising out of an act of terrorism, and indeed that was the intent in Congress in passing the Safety Act, which is to provide those benefits. And so you do get that liability cap, and you do get that exclusive action in federal court, which is hopefully going to provide you with some risk management to protect your business enterprise in the event that the worst happens.
That's great. Mandy, do we have anybody waiting on the line with a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I just want to remind everyone that you can type your questions in. Please use the general box rather than the private chat. It makes it a little easier for us to see it. We have another question here. Does the Safety Act cover incidents that occur outside of the continental U.S.?
Okay, so again, that's a great question. If you look at how the Safety Act is written, it talks about against U.S. interests, and in one of the earlier slides I had mentioned that, you know, a U.S. flag carrier, air carrier, vessel carrier, they might be out of the geographic confines, but they are a U.S. interest. So obviously, under the Safety Act, the Secretary hasn't declared an act of terrorism since 9/11, but the way the law is written, it does refer to U.S. interests that might be overseas, such as an air carrier.
Yeah, and I would also like to remind everybody that on the website we have the language from the Act as well as the final rule, which really drills down into the specific kind of details about the different coverage.
The one caveat is, of course, that it would be for claims that are raised in U.S. court.
That's right.
So it would be for those in U.S. courts, not in courts overseas.
So more questions. Anybody else have any other questions out there? I don't have any waiting in the chat box. Mandy, has anybody posed any questions verbally?
No, ma'am, no questions.
Okay. All right, well, you have a captive audience for about 20 more seconds, and we always, as always, will leave the chat room open for a little bit after the close of this webinar. But again, you know, if you have questions about the Safety Act or about your specific technology and you're seeking Safety Act protections, we do encourage folks to give us a call, and we're happy to work through those with you on the phone.
And I also just want to add to that too. Our team is really committed to helping you get this application filled out completely and accurately. And if you even want to run some ideas by us before you hit submit, we're open to that. So on this slide that's been up this whole entire time, there's information about contacting the help desk. So don't feel afraid to reach out to us. We don't want this partnership and this dialogue and this relationship to begin just when you hit submit. If you have questions or need some assistance, please reach out to us before.
Yeah, absolutely great.
Oh, is there a deadline for applying?
Okay, that's a great question.
That is.
So all of the blocks and PQDNs have what I'll call a shelf life, and they're good from anywhere from 3 to 5 years themselves to apply against that block or PQDN. You know, obviously we explore renewing those as time allows. But those blocks and PQDNs are up for a limited window of time. So we do encourage you, if you're eligible, to check them out sooner rather than later and get your application in. An application itself that receives designation, that designation and certification then is good for up to 5 years with the opportunity to renew.
Yep, that's great.
It's a good question.
Okay, I think I saw another one. So now CTPAT is a fast track, just like this CCSF.
So again, all of these blocks, we strive for 60 to 90 days, calendar days, which is an expedite over the conventional application process. And again, I think also the benefit of these blocks and PQDNs for industry partners is that the technical requirements are a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So internally they can assemble a package much faster.
So in layman's terms, what we've done here by creating these block designations is we've done all the research up front and we've evaluated the program that has the block designation. So we understand when you submit your application, we understand exactly what that certification means and exactly what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes it easier on our end.
Yep. So it's a win-win for all of us. I
Yep.
think it's a great program.
Yep. I don't see any other questions here.
All right.
And pardon our squinting, it's kind of small font from where we're sitting. Okay, so without any further ado, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. And thank all of you out there. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2015 as we continue to hopefully get the word out about this great program and see all of your applications.